Divorce Party Planner TV show. I'm your host, Spice, and today I have my very lovely co-host, Echo, also known as Dawn.
Hello.
Everyone say hi to Dawn. We have a super genius with us today by the name of Sebastian Schug. Yeah,
pretty much.
Are we saying it correctly? Because me and Don were like, I hope we're saying it right. Say it for us.
No worries. The German root of the word, like sh, it's very hard to say anyway. So I totally understand. It's been a thing for 22 years. So, but thank you so much for having me.
Can you say it one more time for our viewers?
Schug.
Okay, gotcha. Yeah. Okay. So you're an author, illustrator, narrator, and publisher.
Many hats, yes. It's just an artistic background that I try to incorporate little bits in at a time, and from there it just expands. Okay, that's the short answer.
Okay. What city are you representing today?
So I'm coming from Burbank, California. For those of you who are too lazy to look at that on a map, just think Los Angeles, but even smaller.
Mm-hmm. And I'm over here in Marina Del Rey, California.
Nice.
Phoenix, Arizona over here.
I love Phoenix.
Dawn, is it raining out there today? We got rain over here.
Yeah. No, it's humid though.
Okay, gotcha. So how have you guys been dealing with this coronavirus thing? Is it like messing up your livelihood or what?
Well, I'm not sure if I could speak for everyone here, but I'm technically classified as an essential worker. So while it's not impacting my hours, or at least it wasn't in the beginning, artistically, I found that working from home has been it's been a lot more adaptable. I think a lot of creatives can kind of say that same thing of, working through online and figuring out how to sort of go through the tunnels of getting your product or your brand out there has been a lot more streamlined, professionally anyway. Now, if we're talking about people who are unfortunately going through unemployment, that's another thing. But.
And Dawn, how's it affecting you?
It doesn't really affect me. In fact, I didn't start working from home until maybe a week ago.
Wow.
Yeah, so it's been pretty nice. But then having the setup here, I like it a lot better because my kids are there. I'm able to work with them. And then I can focus on some of the projects that I'm doing as well. So it's helpful.
Actually. Yeah, I like from home too, but I see like a lot of people online, like on Facebook, and there's a lot of depressed people, and there is people that are dealing with the elderly that are really ill. So yeah, I mean, some people are online joking about it, but I think it's affecting a lot of people in various ways, and not really for the positive. But I'm glad that we're able to adapt for the moment anyways.
Yeah, I feel like a lot of people are just trying to make jokes out of it in order to like spin it into something positive. But maybe people's humor is just different.
No, humor always carries like society and in the nation, so that's really important. Especially since you're creative, you understand how that works. Has this messed up you guys' dating life?
I'll let Dawn start.
Yes. I mean, they keep wanting to come over, but. I don't know yet. I'm like, I don't want anybody to come over here yet. That's like too fast. Let's go meet somewhere else. But no, I mean, it really hasn't. It's given me more excuses, legitimate ones.
It's just like, I can't come over. What about you, Sebastian? Has this affected you in any way?
Well, when it comes to my monogamous relationship, not really, considering it's literally just a hop, skip, and a jump to my partner's house, just like the next city over. And I'm not sure if it's happening in the Phoenix area or the area where you are from. Remind me again, Cassandra?
Oh, I'm in Marina Del Rey.
Marina Del Rey. I've heard several rumors of tweets circulating about cops patrolling the area.
Mm-hmm.
Oh,
like giving $500 plus tickets to people who are not who are out for non-essential reasons.
Mm-hmm.
That hasn't happened in this area yet, so I can't speak for the two of you, but haven't seen any cops yet. So
Well, I do see a lot of cops out actually, but I just go like to the grocery store. That's about as far as I'm going. Yeah.
that's about as essential as it gets. And usually, if someone did pull me over, hypothetically, it's like, oh, I'm just going to the grocery store.
Yeah.
So
We're fine.
yeah, I haven't had anything here. It's been pretty laid back. Doug Ducey, the governor of our state, has been pretty laxed or vague in what he was expecting.
Mm. Okay. Now, what about your Easter plans? Is this messed up your guys' Easter plans?
No.
not really. Yeah, no, I mean, usually I'd plan maybe some family get together. Obviously, that's not happening. So
Yeah, not happening for me either.
it's just a matter of like rolling with the punches. And yeah, I mean, you could have like an Easter dinner over Zoom. That's what people are doing nowadays.
Oh, yeah, I'm doing that. Like, I don't think so. Are you guys gonna do it?
Probably not, but I mean,
Okay.
it's a suggestion.
What is your guys' view? Well, you particularly, Sebastian, on having a celebration at the end of a relationship. That's what our show's about: divorce and breakup parties.
Wow. What a segue. Celebrating the end of a relationship. Well, I don't think so. You're asking personally or just as a matter like?
Yeah, personally.
Well, I don't think anyone goes into a relationship expecting it to fail, and whether that be regarding any age up to the age of, let's say, marriage, which technically I could have done at the age of 18. I suppose in a very dire circumstance where you would be better off not being with your partner as opposed to being with your partner, it would call for some celebration. I usually take the time to reflect on it.
Okay.
You know, whenever long that was. But I don't think personally I've ever actually, you know, rah celebrated over losing someone that I legitimately cared about romantically, or even as a friend to start off. So
Okay. But me and Don, we take it to the head with some drinks. No, just
well, I started doing that. You know, the whole college education does take its toll.
I think for, you know, as far as celebrating, it's more or less, I guess from my perspective would be, and this is why I am involved, is it's almost like liberation from being dependent upon somebody, you know.
Definitely.
And so, you know, it's more or less not just, oh, I'm so glad I got away from that person, but it was like, well, I'm still finding who I am, and I'm learning about myself and what I want and what I'm not willing to compromise. And I think those should be celebrated, is your stance in life and where you want to be and where you want to go, you know.
I definitely agree. Yeah.
So, Sebastian, we invited you on our show for a few reasons. We're interested in your artwork, but you're our first child, I guess, of a divorce.
Yes. Quite a background.
Yeah, so how has that affected you?
I think when it comes to dealing with my background and having it merge into how I've lived my life so far, in this instance through relationships, the standard was not there. So viewing a healthy relationship from the start was something that I unfortunately didn't grow up with, and statistically what a lot of people don't grow up with.
I agree with you.
I'm not saying that that's an excuse to treat your partner like garbage and perhaps do the thing that caused, let's say, your parents or your parents' parents to separate and follow in those footsteps, but it should be an opportunity to learn from them. And I think what it is that when you grow up in that environment and you have, I guess in my instance, as many partners as I did previously, you really start to experiment more and more about what works and what doesn't, because it's not exactly like you can ask your parents to help you with it.
Mm-hmm.
So you end up potentially with a circumstance like mine that goes for a grab bag of emotions. So you handle each relationship differently than the last, in the sense that maybe you act more touchy-feely this way or sensitive that way, or you try not to be too headstrong this way. And I think in the end you start to realize who you are as a person through your relationships. Now, there's the chance that you keep messing them up. But I think the bottom line is you want to keep making those mistakes, I feel personally, before you get to that age of commitment or that time of commitment where, hey, I'm ready to settle down, because there's nothing like settling down and realizing, well, I kind of found the wrong person.
That's true.
So I in my opinion, it's my advice that making those mistakes early on is crucial. And while I'm not saying that my past partners were mistakes, definitely not, had it not been for them, I would have not have realized who I am now.
That's understandable. Now, do you have any advice for the parents that are getting divorced and how they should be raising their children? Is there anything that you wish that your parents would have did a little bit differently while they're getting divorced?
There's two sides to this sort of argument, and it's a side of whether or not you're willing to take that chance to try to salvage the marriage or relationship, or it's the point of no return. Now, if it's the former, you really need to sit down with your partner and get into why you got married in the first place. Now, if you started this from, a kinship, you were friends before, good friends, romantic partners, and now you want to take that next step into marriage, look back to the basics, as I like to call them, and remember why you got into this to begin with.
Mm-hmm.
Realize your mistakes, whether it be from one side or the other, or both, a combination of it. That whole codependency definitely ties in, I think, in certain circumstances.
Mm-hmm.
And while I'm not an expert on the topic, I can definitely say that had it gone the way of expressing that difference of opinion, it might have turned out different in my case.
Mm-hmm.
That compromise that's needed to be met. Now, on the other side, if it's past the point of no return, the advice that I can really only give you as a 22-year-old who's never gotten married once in his life is to, first off, realize that what you're doing is your choice at the end of the day, whether it be through consensual means or no, I need to get out of this. And be ready to take that next step, as Dawn said, to that liberation. Mm-hmm. And really just go from there.
Yeah. I think too is, always give the opportunity when you are going towards that road too, is that you have to give the opportunity to see how, like you said, how to express yourself and how to salvage it. But at the same time, you can give yourself a time frame for that, because if it doesn't work by that time frame, then you can really say, okay.
There's definitely a point of no return, and the percentage of marriages that end in divorce is disheartening to even look at, let alone go through. Mm-hmm. So I'm not saying that high number should put someone off or more or less make people consider it, because they may feel that being in this marriage is making me so isolated that it's preventing me from finding other opportunities or other partners that I could have a better experience with. It's a matter of finding your own comfort zone, I feel. That's what's most important.
Yeah, I told you we had the boy genius on here.
I'm not an expert, but
I think what's also vital too, though, is that growth. If you guys are growing together, or if you're not, or if you're stagnant.
If you're growing independently and you have a partner, you're not growing together as much as one would want to hoodwink themselves into believing. If you find yourself growing into a much different person, or into a much, I don't want to say better person, but more experienced person that you didn't find yourself becoming, and you're with this person that doesn't add any value to that, then why are you with that person?
Right. Right.
You know?
It's like you're shooting yourself in the foot. You're shooting yourself in the foot, kind
Shooting
of.
yourself in the foot, and also justifying their reasoning for being there. It's like, no, you didn't have that epiphany from your partner being there. You had it yourself.
Right.
So.
True. Now, Sebastian, you have a variety of skills.
Well,
How long have you been in animation?
Animation was a very short-lived pursuit for me, actually. So animation started for me when I was in freshman year of high school. Ironically, when everything started to take off, revolving around anything romantic. But that's another topic. I carried it over into 10th grade, my sophomore year, where I then realized how draining, honestly, the activity was. And it's not that I wanted to not create animations and film and movies, the latter of which I still do, you know, behind the camera and with voiceovers and things like that. It was just the fierce competition that was out there already. Admittedly, it was my own self-deprecation that really pulled me back. I didn't think, simply put, that I could work for someone like Nickelodeon or Cartoon Network, or hell, even Disney, which is, it envelops us all at this point. So my shortcomings definitely came from within when it came to animation, and that's why I feel as though I gave it up far too earlier than I wanted to give it up.
What or who started your career?
So my career began in illustration, and I kind of chuckle at that because it's a story that I find myself telling almost frankly. Like, it's not a professional discovery story of me drawing in a cafe and someone looked at me and, you know, oh, we're going to make you the next big thing up to the top. It was actually an Algebra 2 class, sophomore year. My teacher had a very strict rule about not paying attention in class. And so I did the only thing I knew how to do, was to not pay attention in class and sketch. And when I saw the shadow looming over me, I'm like, oh, here we go. But my teacher looks at my work and she says, you know, these are really good. How long have you been drawing for? And, you know, I'm shaking in my boots over here, being like, a little bit. She then tells me that she wants to refer me to a friend of hers that is illustrating a children's book, or should I say writing a children's book that needs an illustrator. And of course, me at 15 is like, oh boy. So
yeah, that's really
so I hop on that opportunity, and it was one book. One book turns into five. Five books turn into 30. And over the course of 5 years, which is how long it took up until, what was it? April of 2014 to, I want to say, April or May of 2019, which through that experience, that lifelong experience, that inundation into the, should I say, professional sphere of, you know, illustration and co-authoring and publishing, which would eventually become my main passion, was where I really began to pick up a lot of my skills along the way. I started writing and publishing my own books under pen names. I started bringing in new authors who wanted to publish their books but had no idea how to do it. And I offered not so much a boutique, because my history with that word, boutique publishing, has led me down some, well, not led me, but my author down some financially troubling paths, so we stay away. But an alternative publishing network. So.
Yeah, he's lucky. You said at 15?
At 14.
14, okay.
Wow.
You're so lucky.
Thank you. Thank you.
And very talented.
Admittedly, I didn't think much of it at that age, because at that age, you don't think much of anything. Sure. But I knew it was something that I wanted to continue, and I'm exceedingly glad that I did.
Yeah, that's so lucky. I mean, he's blessed. That was a perfect opportunity. Do you still keep in touch with your teacher?
Definitely. He actually recently hit me up and was like, we haven't touched this series in a while, and the series, for all who's listening, is called The Adventures of Daniel. Mm-hmm. And he's like, look, with this whole pandemic going around, there's a lot of kids who are at risk of being infected. It's kids and the elderly. So I want to have a book that doesn't so much capitalize on that, but warns of the dangers of what's actually happening so that kids can understand. So book 31 is going to be about self-care through times of pandemic. We haven't settled on a title yet, but it's essentially a how-to guide to wash your hands, cover your face, wear gloves. It's presented in a very kid-friendly atmosphere, which, with all that's happening, with all the adults kind of panicking right now, we don't want our kids panicking, but we want our kids to be prepared. I'm speaking like I'm a father, but I'm not. So,
you're still a kid yourself. Like, man. Dawn, do you have any questions for him right now?
I do. So, as a divorced child, or coming from a divorce, what is your aspect on how, if this were to happen at a younger age, do you think it would have affected you or your mother more because it's a single family home or a single person?
What age were you when your parents got divorced?
I was 3 years old.
Oh, so he was at a young age. Okay.
So I feel strongly that age is definitely a major factor in this, because had I have been potentially older, and I'm going to say this with as much brevity as possible because I'm not trying to reveal anything too damning, but at the end of the day, I don't really care. It's been years. It wasn't until many, many years later, about a decade later and change, that I would eventually find out. And finding out at that age is devastating. It shatters all expectations that, of course, you didn't know when you were 3. No one has that kind of cognition at that young of an age. So,
right.
But knowing as I did was definitely the next stepping stone that I had to take in accepting it and moving on. So.
Right. So as far as I guess my question was, if we were going through this now as a younger kid, do you think would your perspective be a little bit more scarier because you only have one parent and there's not two, or would it be scarier for the parent? Or
in my circumstance, it was joint custody. So in essence, I did have both parents. Now, as a kid, you don't know. But you can piece together why certain aspects aren't like how you would expect them to. You would go on the playground, you would go visit a friend's house, and you would notice that mommy and daddy are together. Why aren't my mommy and daddy together? And that was just, the kind of mindset that I was in for a time, where that difference and that sort of culture shock when I entered another friend's house and leaving to come back to what I was so experienced with, but it felt like such an anomaly when I did come back home, was that it's like, wow, this is. I could tell then this was going to shape me in some way, shape, or form. You know, it's like, oh, you'll find out when you're older, kind of thing. Well, yeah, I did find out when I was older, and I don't. I think adults like to play it down a lot more than it really is. If you catch my drift. So I hope that kind of answered your question. You know, I really don't think that. I think regardless of age, whether I would have been younger or perhaps a little bit older, I would have found the conclusion all the same, and I would have reacted all the more same as well. That's about my best answer to that. I mean, I could speak in hypotheticals all day, but
right. Well, I was just asking because of doing the research on some of the stuff that you worked on. You were talking about perspectives, and so you know, it was kind of going based off of that as far as like the demographics, the environment, the cultural aspect of it, the expectations, and things like that. So it was just interesting to hear, because when I guess one of the videos that I did see was called Standpoint Theory, and that was one of the first things that you did mention was the fact that you did come from a house that was divorced and things like that. So that's where my question was coming from. Is from there.
I mean, again, to kind of tack onto it, I grew up in what most would consider to be a run-of-the-mill mid to upper class household, where a lot of people, when you're in that circumstance and other people look in, they don't look at that as not as important. Now, this is coming from maybe an external perspective who has both parents living together or has also had their fair share of experiences that can't exactly relate to you. In my case, and in the case of relationships, as I stated previously, growing up in different perspectives, one of my mom and one of my dad, I learned a lot more about life through two different outlets than maybe I would have if, hypothetically, they were to remain married. So I took from two perspectives of what to do and what not to do, and funneled that into a happy medium, you could say. When it comes down to standpoint of my race, my sexuality, my gender, you know, the many facets that kind of make up the definition of that, I haven't so much let those affect me. I mean, aside from my sexuality, which is, you know, in my relationships, obviously, but I feel like regardless of such, it could happen to anyone, regardless of what someone looks like. So.
I see.
Now, what works do you enjoy publishing? Do you only publish your works or other people's books?
I run a independent publishing company that focuses on taking in authors and artists who would like to publish their own manuscripts. It's a very brick and mortar system where it's sent, it's published, royalties if bought. That's about the most streamlined definition I could give you. But in the beginning, it was only my works. It was the works of my pen name. Mainly just word of mouth. It wasn't until actually about a year ago, or maybe even a couple months ago, like half a year to a year ago, where I would finally start receiving messages or calls, emails stating, I've been looking for an independent publisher, and none of the ones that I was considering reached back out to me. You know, I've given up on trying to get a literary agent because in 2020, I thoroughly believe that that's an impossible feat. You know, you may do better in New York, a more densely populated area with a bigger expansion on the arts, but you know, hey, I've never been, so that's just my guess. But no, I publish both my own works as well as those who I am contracted with to publish.
Why did you pick the genre of horror to narrate those stories?
Horror is a genre that I have always been afraid of.
Me too.
I hated horror, not for the sense of the sort of the scare tactic of it. Well, that's what it is. Yeah. But the fact that I didn't get it, and I thought that horror sort of encapsulates, you know, the in-your-face bleh type thing, which you would see in like the 80s and 90s. It wasn't until I got older, up until my freshman year of high school, when I did this in the beginning. I think my first video was from 2013, where I started to notice more subtler genres of horror, like the slow creeping, the slow burning, thriller type horror, that I was more interested in it for the writing. How it was written, how it was perceived to be, and really how it kept its grounds in reality. I always enjoyed stories that were written and are still written on the premise of it could actually happen in today's world. That's why my older videos, you'd see me narrating long lost episodes, haunted video games, things that you'd find at a flea market that are disconcerting, and, you know, oh, it's haunted, and that was kind of the cliche that was I kind of got tired of. But things set in reality that just made you unsettled, that's why I chose it and why I continue to stick with it all these years.
Yeah, I really enjoy it. Can you tell our viewers where they can find them and listen to them?
Sure. So I can be found at YouTube channel Seabass, like the fish. However, that is probably too generic to type into the search bar, at least when it comes to channel. So you could just type in youtube.com /SHEB, the letter N, TWITH. That URL has been with me since the dawn of time. I can't change it, and to tell you the truth, I really don't want to.
Okay.
It feels like I've been driving forever. My headlights illuminating the stretch of road that lays before me. I'm surrounded by nothing but trees and whatever lies beyond them. It's times like these that make you reflect. I tend to never reflect on anything until today. Till this night. I feel the urge to reflect on choices. It's crazy how everything we do, every minimal choice we make, can affect our lives on a grand or minuscule scale. The result is life or death. The loss of a loved one, the reward of riches, even suicide. Choices. People like me never think about repercussions of choice. We just do. The hours are getting to me. 9 hours on this same stretch of road with no other car in sight. No stops or turns, just road and woods. My choices got me here. The wrong turn, maybe. The wrong decision, most definitely. Why are the worst decisions the most satisfying? You know, this car was one of those. This car. God, how I love this car so much. The very first time I saw it, I knew that I would make a bad choice. My worst human flaw is that I tend to fall in love with things that don't belong to me, and this was one of them. Unfortunately, someone owning something never stopped me from making the choice to have what I want. In turn, making the choice to take this car led me to flee the town, which led me to this road. I was told by a friend about a road that I could take to avoid the police. He said it would only take me about 3 hours to get into the next town. After 4 hours, I decided to turn around and come back, but it's been over 5 hours and nothing has changed. I should have reached the town hours ago. You would think the car would have ran out of gas already, but it doesn't even have a gas meter. Could it be electric? But wouldn't it still have to charge? I'm terrified, but I love this car. It has an old-fashioned radio that oddly has only one station that plays the same song over and over again. Every 6 songs, a radio DJ, whose voice can be described as a cross between Lurch and Alfred, will come in and say a list of random names before we're playing the song again.
That's because I noticed you had 2 names.
Yes.
So can you kind of elaborate why we have 2 names?
So Sebastian Schug is obviously my authorial name. I believe that's the correct word. And my pen name is Nicholas Parker. Now, in the beginning, I wanted to publish a series of books about a series of topics that I thoroughly felt that my name, had it been affixed with my name, it would have been incongruent with what I was working on at the time. And what I was working on at the time was The Adventures of Daniel, which was a very kid-friendly, family-associative Norman Rockwell family about traditional family values, not political by any means, but like what you would interpret the average family to be.
Okay.
I love Norman.
Now, Nicholas Parker handles subjects that are very much not so. And what I mean by that is not so much in like offensive or in any way damning material, but that was where I wanted to focus more on satire and humor and absurdism and really where I could kind of run wild with it. Nowadays, unfortunately, those 2 names have kind of merged into one. And it's not that I've abandoned Parker. Here I am speaking in like the third person. It's just I think it's me coming to terms with myself being more confident in publishing essentially whatever I choose to. Okay. Whatever I find interesting. And more importantly, if people come to me wanting to publish their project, they're wanting me to publish it under my name as the publisher, not this entity that doesn't even exist, technically.
I see. Okay.
So from their genres, obviously authors have their genres coming in, it started to become a hodgepodge of things that didn't even involve illustration in some cases. Sometimes it didn't even involve writing. They would have a completely formatted manuscript, all the images were done, they just needed it to be published. So when it came down to organizing the genres, I decided that I wasn't going to, and just publish it under my name. Now, there still are books out there published under Nicholas Parker, and I do intend to keep it that way. But when it comes down to people wanting to work with me, I try to keep it as transparent as possible. They could find my name on Google, Sebastian Schug, and see an itemized list of what's already published so far.
Oh, I see. Okay. So it's kind of like you evolved.
There we go.
2 names. Okay. That's awesome.
Thank you.
So you're like a really young dude. So what are your views on dating and marriage?
Ooh. Well.
Do you think marriage is promising, or is that outdated?
Well, to answer your previous question, opinions on dating. I look at it as, like I stated previously, don't be afraid to screw up, because that's what's going to happen. And I think especially given my age, since you asked, there is a lot to learn in the time span of, God, how young are people dating nowadays? I started in high school, and I'm guessing people are going even earlier than that. And
I got middle school days.
it's just, I mean, it's kind of a topic that I can't say much in, because other than, hey, wait, watch out, life's going to hit you where it hurts sometimes, and the best you can do is just prepare for it. But when it comes to dating, it's just a matter of, if someone believes that they're going to find the right partner at such a young age, they're most likely not. And I think that's just an inconvenient truth that a lot of people don't want to hear.
True.
My stance is about marriage. I can't say much, because obviously I'm not married. I can, however, critique the people who get married too early.
Yeah.
And how do I know that? Is that the marriage doesn't last. Now, we have people in their 30s and 40s at an ample time to get married, maybe late 20s, that don't last either. But the level of maturity in a teenager, which is technically 18, the age where you can legally get married, you know, you may agree with me on this one, is not up to par with a young adult. So,
Yeah.
you know, I'm not saying that I'm not surprised. You know, I'm not saying I'm not surprised when these marriages starting off young don't work out, because 9 times out of 10 they don't.
Yeah, and that's facts. There's actually facts on that.
That's true.
Do you think you'll ever get married?
I certainly hope so. You know, I definitely don't want to be that type of person writing and illustrating books about, you know, oh, why this doesn't work out. I'm totally kidding.
Like me and Don.
I would most definitely love to get married at the time when it is right. I can't say for certain, unfortunately, when that time is, because I don't know. And no matter how much external factors weigh in on that, whether it be people's opinions, oh, you should really get married, you should really have children. You know, thankfully I wasn't raised in that environment to begin with, so I'm in no rush, I guess you could say.
Okay.
Although I did hear though, with I think it was with guys. Now I know girls dream about getting married or having certain ideas about how they want their wedding to be and things like that. But from a guy's perspective, from what I have heard, is that they do have an idea of kind of like the time frames when they were younger about where they would like to be at, as far as maybe education, job-wise, career, and then marriage and whatnot.
There's certain. Oh, I'm sorry.
Oh no, I was just asking. Yeah.
Oh, do I have that? In a way, yes. There are expectations not only placed upon me from others, but also I've learned to do so on myself. I would like to achieve a certain amount of money at a certain age. I would like to own a house at a certain age. I would ideally like to find the correct partner at a certain age, whoever that may be, and, you know, God willingly, it's the one I have now. But I think but I think in a way, me speaking it into existence like that is just me sort of honing in on the uncertainty of it all, because I don't know what's going to happen in 10 years in the same way that I don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. And I don't think that I'm being offensive when I say that, when I don't know what's going to happen, if what's going to happen is I may potentially end up single, or I may potentially never end up owning a house, or never accruing a certain amount of money. Things happen in life, and I've learned to deal with that, process it, and accept it, and move on, and make books out of it. So it's a very tricky subject that I don't think anyone on this earth has the answer to.
Right. No, I was just shocked that at a young age, or a young age of a male, that even gave that a thought, you know, as children, you know, because girls do. They think about the weddings and what they want to do, who they want to invite, things like that. So I was shocked because I recently learned that. So that was one thing that I tend to ask everybody now, is like, oh, so did you have something in line or in mind? You know, and so it's interesting.
I mean, the world seems a lot bigger to you at 14 than it does when you're 22, which is, I feel for me, is sort of the epicenter of where a lot of these things started for me. And with time, it's just a matter of realizing that realism of the situation.
Yeah.
Now, can you tell all of our party people about your animation, Take Your Ex Out for a Steak?
So well, it's actually illustration. Sorry, it's not an animation.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
My illustrative work, Take Your Ex Out for a Steak Dinner, was a parody piece in the beginning. I created it with the intention of highlighting all of the, admittedly at the time, negative attributes of what my previous relationships in 2017 at that time were. Now, I did this in a very humorous way where I would depict myself as a very, cocky, aloof kind of guy at the end, because I believe I sent you both the full manuscript.
Yes, I saw it.
With age, you start to get, a little bit more, I'm Mr. Big Shot. And in the beginning, there was definitely that whole scaredy cat image, which I fully enveloped. I mean, I had no idea what I was doing in the beginning. And as you can plainly see throughout each and every one of those chapters, I still didn't, because they still ended. It wasn't until I got in touch, well, it wasn't until I found who I now consider to be my big brother mentor type figure, it is dedicated in the first page of the book, that I decided that I was going to make this for him. Now, not airing out his dirty laundry or anything like that, but he had his fair share of faulty run-ins with a few partners that didn't exactly work out. And when we met, our first conversation was about this topic, and it was about how we deal with it. So when he came forward to me one day, many, many months later, and said, I want you to draw me something that doesn't encapture you, how you fit into a certain organization or what you've dealt with through school. I want you to draw me something that encaptures you as a person. I was not finished with Take Your Ex Out for a Steak Dinner when he said this, but I now knew that upon finishing the book that it took on a much more different purpose. I wanted to keep the humor in there as much as I could, but I also wanted to show how realistic it could get, how it could affect me not only positively but negatively in what I've learned and what people bring to the table. Because, like I said in the beginning, you never go into a relationship expecting it to fail. But I will be honest, throughout those relationships, because I was so young and because I could somewhat justify it, I did. Because I was not married. I am not married. I was not committed, to that lifelong partner archetype thing. I was 19, 18, 19, 20, in the years of those books. I think it captures me ages 14 through about, I want to say like 19, 20. But
can you tell me why you named it that? Take Your Ex Out for a Steak?
Take Your Ex Out for a Steak Dinner was titled that way because it was meant to embody all of what I wanted to represent as a whole once the relationship was over. And what that meant to me was being cordial, being nice, being friendly, not trying to salvage what was remaining of the relationship, but trying to keep them in your life to such a point where you would want to take them out for dinner again, where it wouldn't be awkward to take them out for dinner again. And it's stated in such a way where take your ex out for a steak dinner, it's written almost as like a command, where it's a hurdle that you have to get over. It's a hurdle that you have to even break up with someone in the first place and find that closure, let alone find that friendship again. And for a lot of instances, for a lot of circumstances, I didn't. And I am glancing over. Sorry, it's not scripted because
over there, like,
I do have a copy of it right here.
Oh, wow.
I was going to ask you, Sebastian, what makes it unique? The different chapters. What makes those different chapters so unique?
I've learned to associate different events in my life, specifically the people that those events spawn from, with colors. Yeah. On an aesthetic note, and probably the most prominent thing you notice about the book is that each chapter timeline is written in a different color in succession. Truthfully, I don't know why I picked that. I mean, I do deep down know why, because it was meant to assign a number, but I know how shallow that sounds, and it's not something that I regret doing for sake of publishing, because there had to be a way to adequately categorize each and every one of these stories, but it's a way to just itemize it. It's a way to help my brain associate what happened when and with who. And every time I think about certain scenes from the book, from my life, if it's purple, I know exactly what you're talking about in a heartbeat. It's a snap judgment, and I've never changed these colors since.
Yeah, that's interesting. I've never seen a book like that. Have you, Dawn?
No.
Yeah, I thought that was really cool.
Thank you.
Neat feature. Yeah, that's a unique way to do that. But I also read that you said something about you refer to women coming and going like a factory line.
Oh,
what does that mean?
It means in the time I started dating to the time really that college began, and even in the years onward, that it was each and every year. Now, I'm not saying that this was done forcefully, like I was actively looking for someone. I do believe wholeheartedly in serendipity, whereas things happen and it's there for a reason. It's just I really don't, I really, it takes me back in such a way where I didn't expect it to happen at the rate it did, or the time frame that it did, but I'm glad that it did, because those were lessons one after the other that I think, had I been exposed to it at a much older age, I wouldn't have known how to handle it. I still to this day believe that had I not had my first heartbreak at age 14, 15, and instead would have had it at age 22, that would have been a much bigger detriment for me. It sounds stupid. It really does in the grand scheme of things, because the relationships that you have with, let's say, a significant other versus someone like your family, I mean, there's no contest, right? But having these lessons from previous partners, it's something that I don't regret. I don't regret them happening at the time that they did. So it was a factory line. It happened in succession, and I rolled with the punches, and at the end of the day, I think I can safely say that everything was for the best.
See, I almost have the same perspective as well. Oh, sorry.
Oh, I was saying, I've had male roommates, and they'll have these females come over, and 30 minutes later there's some other females coming over. So I was wondering if that's what he meant.
No. I know that sounded very scummy of me to
that's what I was thinking.
It could be interpreted as scummy, but I really did intend it to have a much deeper meaning, which you know, 3 years later, here I am telling you. So.
Yeah, for me, I looked at it as like stepping stones. Climbing,
there you go. Yeah.
you know, climbing to what you're earning, I guess you could say.
Yeah, it's each and every one. It's a stepping stone.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I noticed that there's some sex scenes in your illustration. Have you received any scrutiny because of that?
I have not. I think for reasons of freedom of expression, and it's not to, again, sound political, it's just as a matter of how I recounted it.
Okay.
Now, I'm not shy of depicting scenes or instances that may be incriminating, because at the end of the day, this is just who we are as humans.
Mm-hmm.
In the beginning, I debated on whether or not to add these scenes in the first place, or, you know, instances of profanity or potentially things that would be indicting. But then I thought, you know what? No. Because this was for someone, this was for my mentor, and he needed to see it. When I published it, I realized that I was okay with letting others see who I was as well, which was another big stepping stone. Like I said before, I used to be really self-conscious in not only the way I talked or the way I wrote or the way I drew, because I would see other people do it and wonder why I couldn't emulate it, but being grounded in reality for who I was as a person and getting that out there, it meant a lot. It really did. That I could do it myself.
Yeah, I think some of the best animations are the ones that are, you know, relevant. Like with South Park. Oh my God. You know, they use cursing and everything else. The other day, devil worshiping in there, and I was like really surprised, because like back in my day, like Christians would have had a heart attack. So it was just so funny that like, you draw anything nowadays, and you know, people watch it, and that's what they actually like, the shock of it.
I'm just, you know, I'm not shy about showing off who I was or who I am anymore, and I thank those experiences for that.
So is it because you think maybe you're older, or is it because of all the projects you have behind you now is the driving force of just being as transparent and being able to express whatever you want?
In the beginning, it was vanity, I'll admit. It was the whole, oh, I have all these projects behind me, you know, I'm just going to go in guns blazing.
Mm-hmm.
A stupid way to think, but you got to understand, when you start at 14, a lot doesn't matter to you in the moment.
Right. I don't think it's stupid. I think it's just one of those.
I do feel like it is acceptance throughout maturity over the years. It is the statement that parents always say, you know, be careful of what you put out there. What's out there of you is out there forever. Mm-hmm. And I've learned to be okay with that. I've learned to I've learned to accept who I am as an individual, and realize that the mistakes I've made are mistakes that I hope to not continue to be making, but if it comes down to me having to make these mistakes in order for me to understand, then by all means.
Right.
I don't mind failure anymore, and I don't mind the world seeing that side of me.
Okay. That's good.
Yeah.
Oh, where can our viewers purchase or view Take Your Ex Out for a Steak Dinner?
So Take Your Ex Out for a Steak Dinner, among my other works, if you just search up my name, Sebastian Schug, on Google, well, it can be found on Google Books, for one, but any first, second, and third-party online retailers will have copies. Now, that doesn't mean that any Barnes & Noble that you walk into is going to have it, for sake of maybe they don't have enough room on their shelf. It's kind of a tricky situation when it comes to actual bookstores because they order a set amount of inventory, and when it comes down to it, at least in my case, my books are always in the store. They're just not on the shelf because they haven't ordered it yet.
Mm.
You know, it happens, but they can find me through Amazon, Google Books, iBooks, Barnes and Noble. There's Nook, there's Kobo, there's 24 Symbols, Overdrive. When it comes to audiobooks, even more distribution channels. One that I unfortunately don't have the list for, but it can all be found under Sebastian Schug, Nicholas Parker, or any of my associative publishing projects from other authors.
Okay.
It's a big rabbit hole, you know.
So we can find you, then it's not difficult to do. Since you write and narrate horror stories, have you scared women away, or are they drawn to it? Like women like Dawn might be drawn.
In my past experience, they've found it either interesting, they've found it quirky, they've found it weird, they've found it in such a way as to why are you wasting your time in front of a computer narrating when you can be doing other things college kids do. I really don't think that some people realize that a lot of what a college kid does is right here in front of a computer anyway. So, but it depends on the woman, I guess you could say. You know, I can't say for all of them, but I will say that for the ones that I have come into contact with, that it is an art form that they didn't really expect someone like me to do, but they find it interesting.
Yeah, there's like cults of people who follow horror stories, so I think it's a really cool genre to explore. Yeah, there's cults of people who follow horror stories, so you will always have someone checking out your work. That's what I believe.
I hope so. I hope so.
I think it's growing, actually.
Yeah, people love that stuff. I mean, and my grandma loved it. Like,
yeah.
I'm
now,
always trying to
Sebastian, you've been making a lot of. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry.
No, that's cool. I think it's cool that we could just go online and check you out, because most horror stories are like visual, and yours are just like we can listen to them, like probably on our iPod or something.
I like to make it simple for those to, you know, some people just don't want to read it all. That's fine. That's fine.
You could just listen to it then. Since you've been making a lot of radio appearances and on television as well. So what have you gained from this? Like all this publicity that you're getting?
I would say that this publicity has, I think in a perfect world, people expect publicity or PR to give you that, you know, monetary reimbursement, where I've realized that's not the case, at least in my circumstance, and I'm okay with it. Mm-hmm. In the years that I started illustrating, I told myself that I was not in it for the money, and of course I was lying. No, I was, because I told myself at a very young age that I could be a BMOC and you know, rule the school. Oh, it's that illustrator walking by. Oh my God, you know. It's a very selfish way to think. And throughout the years, it has truly become a testament to, I don't care if I would receive a penny from this. I love to do it. And I love to connect and outreach with more individuals who either share those same feelings for the subjects that I do and want to further expand upon that, or who are generally and genuinely inquisitive about it, such as you two.
Yeah.
So
me and Don, we both love horror films, right? Right, Don? As you could tell in our dark background. And I used to love like the Addams Family and the Monsters. Like those are my favorite shows. They're like just creative and artistic, and my grandma loved horror films, and I love Cassandra, Mistress of the Dark, so I just love that.
I think the gravity too is of why I like it is because I do come from a Native American background, and so there's a lot of darkness in that in regards to the folklores and the
There's
culture.
a lot of urban legends that it's so interesting.
Mm-hmm.
And this is coming from someone of a Hispanic background where scaring you was the way to discipline you.
Yes. Yes, it was. So it still is.
Oh, no. Do you come from a Hispanic background or German, Sebastian?
My mom's side is Spanish origin. My dad's side is from Germanic origin.
Oh, okay. So you're mixed. Like, both her and I are as well.
Yeah.
Well, I have 4 different tribes.
Yeah, I guess the same ethnicity, but different tribes. Yeah, so you're mixed in your own way. Done.
Well, my grandparents just didn't want to date in the same tribe in case they were cousins.
Oh yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, let's see here. So what is your ideal goal for your career? Because you wear so many different hats. Is there like a particular goal that you want to accomplish or you want to get close to?
Ideally to capture all of it in one. It sounds very general when I say it, but I thoroughly believe that there are ways to capture writing, illustration, audiobooks, publishing, narration, that audience interaction, and all in all, the things that I've loved to do in a format where people can not only share it, but further analyze with it and draw more people in. Mm-hmm. We live in an age where everything is very much so funded upon, whereas, costs an arm and a leg to pretty much do anything. Myself, the background that I've come from is that it's not to ask for so much up front. So I don't either when it comes to my business model of Sebastian Schug Publishing, my independent publishing company. Whereas I charge no upfront fees. I only charge a specific percentage after everything is sold. To other people looking in, that sounds idiotic, because why the hell would you not want to charge for a legitimate service that you are providing? But it's like I said, it's not, to me at least, it's not about how much money I can make from someone who just wants to get a book out, because at the end of the day, they're just trying to get a book out. They've already done the work in making the book. They shouldn't have to worry about what this next financial risk is going to get them, because I'll tell you what their next financial risk is going to get them when they take out a second mortgage. They are never going to accrue that back in royalties, and I'm speaking from personal experience. That's my vendetta with boutique publishing companies, by the way. Right. It's the system that unfortunately they're made up of from the ground up. They're not going away, and rather than join them, beat them is my philosophy.
Right. That's a smart way to go.
Right.
How do you usually deal with a bad breakup?
From what perspective?
Do you usually do you go binge eating some ice cream?
No. When I say from what perspective, it depends on who broke up with who.
Oh, okay.
Now, either way, it's going to take its toll. It's not uncommon for myself to kind of remain sedentary when it regards to a breakup. Of course, show emotion, but also sit down and really think through what happened. A lot of people wonder in the breakup stage, what could have happened? What could I have done? What could my partner done? And in the breakup, I think a lot of people are just sort of surrounding themselves with these what if thoughts, that the time for healing, obviously it isn't immediate, but it's when it starts.
Mm-hmm.
As someone
Probably a lot of self-reflection.
As someone who's experienced both sides, it makes me genuinely sorry no matter where it's coming from. It makes me genuinely thoughtful of not only why it ended, but why it was a relationship in the first place. And if anything, if it was an extremely bad circumstance where the only option was leaving, it's about what I can take not only into the next relationship, whenever that is, but what I can take for myself to learn from and to set my expectations towards.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Once again, how can we find more about your books and your illustrations, your animation, your publishing company?
Sure. So you can find me through, I like to keep it as general as possible. If you just type in my name, Sebastian Schug, into Google or any search engine that you choose, you'll more or less find me with an itemized list of not only my published works, but my authors' published works that are contracted under me. That goes the same with Nicholas Parker as well. You can find me through Instagram as well. It's at Dr. Sebi, at DRSEBBY. The same with Twitter, although there is an underscore under Dr. and Sebi.
Okay.
When it comes to YouTube, obviously there is the Seabass channel, which I'll restate the URL again. It's youtube.com /SHEB, the letter N, TWITH. And these, narrations, audiobooks as well, those are in circulation. They can be found under my name alongside my physical and digitally published books. Again, it's just a matter of searching is really the best way.
I got another question. So why do most people like your work?
I feel most people like my work for a variety of reasons, depending on what genre it's from. When it comes to satire, when it comes to absurdism, humor, comedy, there's people that like it because it shows a side of them, of the relatability within circumstances. And the basis for, admittedly, a lot of my written and illustrative works are through personal experiences. And it just kind of goes to show how, one guy behind a computer seems like the world is so big until you eventually talk to someone that has a similar circumstance than yours. Mm-hmm. It's amazing, really, to find fans that like your comedy because it's insightful, like your fiction because it tells a good story, like your horror because it keeps them on the edge of their seat. And, I guess more akin to this show, like the romanticism or the romantic genre because of the bluntness that it portrays.
Mm-hmm.
Don, do you have another question for him?
No, not at the moment. I'm just listening to his answers, and I think there's a lot of you do a lot of critical thinking in regards to your experiences, and so I find that fascinating because I don't think a lot of people do put that into thought, or they don't do a lot of self-reflection. But it seems like it opens the door for people to do that, and I think that's how in a way, that's how people are connecting with your material and with your work, is because they can identify with it, but you're actually enlightening them as well.
I genuinely hope so, is all I can really say to that. From the beginning, I always wanted to establish a connection with people. and whether that be through, funny haha, or the, deeply insightful pseudo-intellectual words and illustrations, I try to cast the largest net I can. Some people won't get it, which is completely understandable, but it's not going to deter me from not doing it.
You're very intelligent and well-rounded. Like, what are the subjects that you're studying in school or that you have studied? I've noticed that you very well-rounded.
So I used to study art. That was my major as soon as I left high school to go into college. That quickly transformed into myself studying political science because I thought that I would be the hotshot attorney in a courtroom. And by no exaggeration am I making this up when I say that I wanted to be a poli-sci major to shout in court and look good doing it, and I realized how stupid that was. It's not that I didn't appreciate the subject, it's just that when you're in a very, very politicized major, the professors start to rub off on that, and they assemble their rubric around that. So I found myself getting medium to low marks, admittedly, because of a difference of opinion. And I decided that that was not going to be for me. So I wanted the best of both worlds, with further emphasis on public speaking and argumentation through communication studies. Communication studies is pretty ubiquitous as well across the playing field in the job market, as well as it's pretty standard in implementing other art forms in it. So I had no problem implementing publishing within communications because, writing an email is something that I learned from writing books. So, you usually flip that around, but, it's, I love to read, I love to write, and I'm glad that my major now associates itself with that.
Thinking back to some of your exes, what are some of the most unusual things that they did? The bizarre stories.
I mean, I'll just address the white elephant in the room. Being cheated on wasn't that good of a time.
Okay.
Let alone multiple times. But again, you take the wins with the losses. Unusual circumstances. I mean, there's been times where, God, what can I say? What can't I say, really?
Right.
I think as a 14, 15, even 16-year-old, there's a lot of cringy stuff that I thought was cool back then, or they thought was cool back then. A lot of, should I say, inexperienced things that I would eventually come to learn, and do with that information as you will. But a lot of noteworthy times. But I think in the instance of it pertaining to why the relationship ended, I'll tell a bit of a story. So, one partner of mine, previous partner, and I went to go see a movie in summer of, I believe, 2015. And, oh God. The movie was opening night, and essentially what had happened was we got there 15 minutes after the first premiere. So we're waiting in line, and unfortunately that premiere is all sold out. The show after that is sold out, and the only show that would have us buy tickets for is 2 hours later. So we had 2 hours to kill. So what do you do when you're 16 and you have nothing to do in the town center, and yeah. You browse the mall, you go to different stores, you kill time, and here we were in, ironic, a Barnes & Noble,
Oh.
And I'm picking up some vibes. God, I sound like such a college douche when I say that. I'm picking up some just emotions from her that I've never really seen from her before. I won't preface who this was, by the way, but it's in the book.
Okay.
So we're in the bookstore, and I'm just picking up some weird emotions from her. She's giving me the cold shoulder. She's not talking to me. She's really antsy, and asking her what's wrong doesn't do anything. So I continue to check out the books, and she looks down at her phone on occasion, and all of a sudden, she's not behind me.
Oh, no.
She's all the way making a beeline for the exit.
Oh.
And I'm like, okay. So I follow her, and I corner her, and she runs away again. I corner her again, and she runs away again, and I'm about to go after her until I get a hand on my shoulder. And it's this guy I've never seen before.
Oh, no.
So,
Uh-oh.
this guy is panting, he's sweating, obviously running after her, and just says, I'll never forget what he said. Listen, man, I know what's going on. I know what's happening. I'm her boyfriend.
Ah!
Oh, no.
That sounds like me and Dom's stories.
It is. It was pretty ridiculous. It was very ridiculous looking back on it, because it was so just. It's like, what is this? What is this, a High School Musical movie? I mean, needless to say, that ended. So, but it's a story that I look back on as it's funny in its execution. I mean, like being
funny for you.
No, I mean, being cheated on, it's not funny at all. And I think looking back on it, I was more mad than sad, because it was like, I'm like, really? This happened to me?
Yeah.
Of course, it wasn't years later till I saw her. And back then I was working at a grocery store with her dad, and we made up right then and there. And yeah, I have no hard feelings about it. I mean, she made it into the book. So it was.
I think that's where we get some of our best materials, from the pain of all of our crazy experiences.
Yes.
It hurt. It did back then. But you know what? Now I can look back on it and say, like, that was a legitimately off the wall experience that I can say that I had. So.
Well, that's just proof, because I've always imagined that women were the ones always getting cheated on, but I hear so many guys saying they got cheated on too. So I guess that just reinforces that, yes, guys get cheated on as well.
It does happen. It really does.
Mm-hmm.
Any last words for an ex or exes out there watching?
Switching gears, this was the question I was anticipating the most, and I kind of want to be like, well, for me at least, I'd like to do something I've never really done before when it comes to that. I have plenty, but for sake of brevity, I do want to not only express my what's the word? It's leaving me. My apologies, but I also want to express my thanks. Because really, growing up, and I'd like to try to relate this to our previous topics as much as possible, but growing up in a household where the proper idea of a relationship was never there, and truth be told, can never be there, no matter how many times either one of your parents get married.
Mm-hmm.
Being in a relationship at a young age, I feel is something that everyone goes through at one point or another. And my relationships, in a lot of ways, are something that I owe everything to. Mm-hmm. That I owe my personality to, my adaptation to certain circumstances to, and more importantly, how I've grown to view and see the world. You know, when you're heartbroken at such a young age, and it sounds so stupid saying that because, you know, what does a 14-year-old even know what heartbreak is? Mm-hmm. And I'm not trying, you know, I'm not. Yeah. I'm not trying to write off my experience as something like detrimental. You know, it affected me in such a way that, you know, it's lived with me for the rest of my life. But if I'm being honest, it has. Mm-hmm. I look back on these relationships constantly, not so much to want to get back with these people, these women, but wonder where I can go from there. Wonder what I could have done. And more importantly, hope and pray that they're doing okay, or in certain circumstances that they're doing better without me in their life. And I've come to terms with that. I truly have. When you're depressed or heartbroken or whatever the term you want to associate it with at such a young age, there's really no telling what someone will do or what someone is capable of doing in those times. And I can safely say that, you know, I thank each and every one of them each and every year in the years previous. I mean, I'm not saying like it's going to happen again. I hope not. But I'm just saying as like a preface that these women are individuals that I'll always hold near and dear to my heart. I really will. Whether it be as friends or less than that, unfortunately, because that's the way people view it nowadays. Whereas it's over, it's over. There's no salvaging it, even on a friend standpoint. But just I can't guarantee any of them that, you know, maybe they'll ever listen to this. And if they do, I just want them to know that when I wrote Take Your Ex Out for a Steak Dinner, and when I wrote all of these books pertaining to, you know, apologies with people that, you know, maybe weren't even relationship caliber at all. They were just casual encounters or what could have beens or ones that got away. They're all special in their own unique way, and I hope I hope I can grow up never forgetting the time spent with them. Truly. So.
Okay, thank you. You know what I thought? He said he was going to do something really different, and I thought for a second he was going to moon the show. Sean, I thought you might have mooned our show. We've had people flip off the camera and they'll ask you. So I'm glad you did it. I was kind of worried.
When a lot of people mention breakups, I feel as though they have a vendetta. They have a vendetta towards their ex-partner, and admittedly, maybe I did in the sudden moments after, but growing up, I realized that I can't feel that way anymore, unfortunately.
I think that's so interesting because you know, coming from two homes, growing up that way, maybe, you know, that does instill why you do think that way, but at the same time, it's really neat how you take the time to actually really sit back and look and reflect on those things, and then being able to move on from that. And that, I think a lot of those times too is where that's where I'm coming from when I'm talking about liberation, is being able to adjust and really take the time to acknowledge the people that you are with individually on a unique perspective. And I think that's something that nobody does anymore, because it's almost all taken for granted. Well, if they don't do what I want to do, I'm gone. Or if they don't live up to my expectation, or but it's not about that. It's about gaining something from that relationship, but making sure that you're growing from it. And it sounds like you've really understood that at such a young age.
I still feel that I have, leaps and bounds to go, that I'm not done learning, and truthfully, I don't want to stop learning, because while I do agree that there is such a thing as overthinking, and I'm guilty of it myself, and admittedly has cost me a fair amount of relationships, it's something that I've learned to subside. It's something that I've learned to adapt to. And most importantly, it's something that if it's going to affect someone, I'd rather it be me. I am not one for causing undue heartache on someone that doesn't deserve it.
Right.
And that's coming from someone who has done that. And I don't want to be that person anymore.
Wow.
Thank you guys for being part of the Spicy Divorce Party Planner Show.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
There you go.
An Echo Maiden. Right? All right. Thank you guys.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Have a nice day.